I feel like Piers Morgan completely defeated the point of this documentary. Having said that, Killer Women with Piers Morgan is something that I absolutely adored, and I thoroughly enjoyed every single episode, but I do have a problem, and that is Piers Morgan. Now, I have to say, I'm actually not one of those people who detests Piers Morgan. I don't think he's as bad a person as people make out. I'm pretty indifferent to him, actually. But when watching this, I got really frustrated. So I'm going to get this little rant out of the way, and then I'll kind of talk a bit more about this. And there will not be spoilers in this, so I won't spoil it. But because these are cases that have already happened, maybe it's not that possible to spoil it anyway. My problem with Piers Morgan is his interviewing style. The purpose of this documentary is for these women who have been imprisoned, they're incarcerated because they've committed murder or have been involved heavily in murders, is for them to have a chance to talk and share their story. They're already convicted, but Piers Morgan seems to be interrogating them. It's like, well, what's the point? They've already been convicted. This is the chance for these women to say their story, and regardless of whether or not they're maintaining innocence, it's a chance for them to have their voice, to share their emotions with what's happened, to say whether or not they're remorseful, and to give their own perspective, because they've obviously never had a chance to do this before. And yet Piers Morgan spends more time than not interrogating these women. Now, it's not an entire interrogation. A lot of the time he is just asking questions and listening to their answers. But sometimes he will interrogate them, and it's really frustrating because he is therefore not giving any credibility to what these women are saying. He's basically saying that they are lying, but they're not on trial. It's just their chance to tell their side of the story. So, considering he's a highly experienced journalist, I'm not entirely sure why he thought that was a good idea, because it proves that he doesn't know his subject, he doesn't know how to treat them. And that's awful. But the rest of the documentary, the actual documentary itself, is brilliant. So it begins each episode with Piers Morgan meeting one woman in turn. There's one episode where it's two women, but for the most part, each episode focuses on one woman. They are all American. And he sits down with them in the prison and gives a little backstory of their story. And then we get to see sometimes interviews with their relatives who were involved, or other people who were involved, prosecutors who have perhaps been involved in their case. Where applicable, we have audio and footage from the crime scenes. And it's really just about these women telling their story, their involvement, what made them do it, and how they feel now, years later. Some of these women have really only just begun their sentences. Some of them are halfway through their sentences. And a lot of these women are from backgrounds where it wouldn't have been expected of them. In fact, pretty much all of them. So it's very interesting to hear their sides of the story when Piers Morgan actually gives them a chance to. And I'd say maybe half of them maintain their innocence, which is interesting. And obviously when Piers is interrogating them, he obviously doesn't believe them. But there are many people who are incarcerated on, wrongful convictions. So he shouldn't be doing that. He should just be letting them talk and say, well, actually, I do think I'm innocent. I didn't do this. They got it wrong. And yeah, while one may say, well, they're incarcerated, they were found guilty. Of course they did it. There are many people who face wrongful convictions. So they should have been given this chance to say their story. And for the most part, they did get their point across. You just have to ignore Piers trying to be a brutal bully. So as I said, I won't really go into any detail about the actual cases because I don't want to spoil it. But the first season, there are only 2 episodes from what I can see. IMDb lists 4 of them, but there's no information about the second half. The first season only has 2 episodes. The first one is about a 16-year-old girl heavily involved in a brutal murder. I think she's probably the youngest person to have been incarcerated at the point. And the second episode looks at 2 stories, both of which somebody murders a loved one. There is a very young person who is a witness, called as a witness, a very young child called as a witness, and it's worth watching that second episode just to see that, because it's very hard to watch, and I don't necessarily agree that it was the right thing to do. I'd love to know your opinion on that. The second season, there are 5 episodes. Each one looks at an individual person. I will say, I won't tell you what the episode's about, but I will say the first episode, I kind of feel like she was innocent. I don't feel like she's guilty. I hope that it's resolved and that she is found innocent. That's Rebecca Fenton. I will tell you this one because it's a little bit of an interesting thing. The second episode looks at Jennifer Mee, who is known as the hiccup girl. You may remember the girl who had uncontrollable, continuous hiccups. Well, yeah, she's in prison for being involved in a murder. Her story is really interesting. I do not think her sentence should have been severe. In fact, I think it's absolutely pathetic that she was given such a strong sentence. The third one is pretty shocking and outrageous, and I still don't really understand why this person, Ashley Humphrey, why she did this. It's very unclear. Very interesting. The fourth one is Amber Wright, and this one's hard to watch. She was 15. She was 15 at the time of the incident, the murder, and we get to see some footage of her being interviewed at the time, which is very brutal. And obviously at this point, I think she's been in prison for about 8 years, and I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be any remorse. And the last one is actually somebody, she was a Miss Texas or something. She won some kind of pageant. She was in love with somebody who was in love with her, but who was obsessive, and things went wrong. I kind of feel like she might have been innocent as well, but I don't know. It is very frustrating because there are a lot of these women who seem really innocent and there is no solid evidence. You know, the ones who claim their innocence, they've been convicted with no real evidence against them. Maybe just circumstantial. And I don't know, maybe different states are a lot more lenient with the evidence that needs to be presented in court. But I hope the ones that I think are innocent do actually turn out to be innocent. It's very fascinating though. We don't really get to see too much about what life in prison is like for these women. It's not really about their daily lives, their daily routines. It is basically just about their cases. And I would like to see more about what their life is like in prison. So if there's a third series of Killer Women, my two requests are, one, Piers Morgan shuts up with interrogation because it's uncalled for and defeats the purpose of giving these women a platform for their voice, and that we maybe just get to see a little bit about their life in prison and what they now have to put up with on a daily basis as a result of the crimes they have committed or have been accused of. But other than that, I do think it is genuinely enjoyable. If you can look past the interrogation, I have no complaints about it. If you know what happened to episodes 3 and 4 of the first season, please let me know. I'd be very interested to know if they do exist anywhere. But, you know, I'm enjoying this. The last season was out in 2017, so I doubt we'll get a third season. But fingers crossed, let me know what you think of it. And if you have a favourite case, let me know. I have to say Jennifer Mee's was particularly enjoyable. Rebecca Fenton's was the first that I watched, and I still think she was innocent. Hopefully. Let me know what you think.